that helps them actually like make substantial change in their lives over some amount of time. That's what I'm thinking about. So some of that stuff involves like we're doing more and more like clinician education. So thinking about, okay, so for some of the problems that we have, like one of the biggest challenges that we see with things like technology addiction or pornography addiction is that most clinicians are not trained in this stuff.
Sure.
So also some of these other like non-clinical entities like imposter syndrome, burnout. So there isn't like formal training in this. And the default is like, okay, if you have a problem with imposter syndrome, go see a therapist. But nowhere in, the certification of a therapist and the licensure of a therapist and the curriculum of a therapist are they required to learn about burnout. So we're seeing like all kinds of challenges in our school systems, in our mental health professionals. And so we're trying to address those gaps.
Gotcha. What do you think? I know you brought up, I think you said porn, gaming, and imposter syndrome. Are these like the most common people that you see through your, through your chats, through the coaching and everything you do? Is there like a common set of problems where you see most people have like these things? Yeah.
I'd say that like relationships with technology are probably number one. So whether that's video games, whether that's pornography, whether that's social media. So I think that in all cases, the fact that there's a digital intervention.
Yeah.
Anyone who uses a digital intervention is using certain methodologies to increase the engagement of that digital intervention.
Okay.
And so that increase in engagement means more utilization of the thing, which then moves us closer to addiction, which then costs people time in other dimensions of their life. So I'd say tech addiction is number one.
Okay. Can I tell you something that's very, very, very annoying to me?
Yeah.
So I'm sure you see on the internet, there's a lot of feelings about you've got like capitalism, communism, in terms of like atomization of society and how capitalism alienates us. You've got people that complain about loss of religion. You've got people that talk about red pill and feminism. And all of these people have all these ideas about what's going on with society. And I feel like it's not very sexy or fun to talk about. But I honest to God feel like 90% of the changes that like young people are going through have to do with cell phones and the internet. And it blows my mind that nobody talks about that. I feel like if you look at the vast majority of, let me qualify. I'm sorry. When I say nobody talks about that, I mean, when people are talking about diagnosing social ills, it's always, it's got like such a heavy like political or like, some sort of like critical analysis of society. But it feels like people don't talk enough about how much cell phones and the internet have fundamentally altered every single aspect of our lives in like an unrecognizable way.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't get quite as frustrated, I think. But what's frustrating about that to you?
I feel like the substitution of real life interactions and the disappearance of more and more places where I've got a friend that calls them warm places, where basically it's places where you go and when humans are around other humans, opportunities for relationships, for friendships, for collaboration, like these things just kind of organically sprout. And those places are slowly disappearing and they're being replaced by more and more online spaces, which have some major benefits and some major downsides. And I feel like that's like fundamentally altering the fabric of how we all relate to each other. Like for like a more tangible point, I keep seeing these like charts going around where you can see like, oh, how do you meet a girlfriend or boyfriend? And it's like the vast majority meet through friends, some meet through like school or work. And then like as of 10 years ago, you see like online stuff go from 0% to like 65% in terms of like how we meet our significant others now. And it's just crazy to me that there isn't I can't imagine. I'm sure. I think you're a tad older than me, right? I'm 35. I can't imagine like living in school with social media. Like just imagining the pressure of I have to go home and now I'm still 100% connected to every single person. That is unbelievable to me, and I feel like people don't talk about that as much as I would imagine it would warrant. Yeah.
Yeah. So. It's interesting because I think people do talk about it. I think it's so funny because it's almost like exactly what you're describing is like what you're running into, which is that, so you're saying, okay, like people blame capitalism, people blame communism, and you're saying the problem is that people don't talk about the loss of third spaces or cell phones or the internet, there are a lot of people talking about that.
Sure. It might be also that I select for these obviously heavily political spaces.
So I think that's what's going on.
I'm falling
right? So
victim to my own diagnosis.
Exactly.
True,
right?
yeah, okay.
So now based on your social media algorithm, you are seeing like, oh, everyone is like misdiagnosing the problem, or you are now attributing. So for someone else, oh, everything that's wrong in the world is capitalism.
Sure.
And now for you, kind of, I'm oversimplifying here, and I don't actually think you think this, but everything wrong with the world is that people don't talk about the fundamentals. I think a lot of people are talking about the fundamentals.
Okay, that's good.
I think the challenge is that I completely agree with you that the problem is that the question of cell phone and internet use is being talked about in places that are separated from cell phone and internet use. Right.
Wait, can you repeat that again? Say that again.
Yeah. So the places where people are talking about it are largely separated. That's not precisely true. I'll give a couple examples. But the problem is the places that these discussions are happening are not to the audience that needs to hear it.
So it's like educators talking to psychologists, or like therapists talking to, instead of like talking to children.
If you go to like the American Psychiatric Association conference, which is actually happening right now, like the amount of time they spend on digital stuff and the impact of the internet has skyrocketed.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
But you do have some popular media people. Like I think, there's this guy named Jonathan Haidt. I've never met the dude, but he's like wrote a book and is advocating for like basically no cell phone use under the age of 16.
I kind of agree. Yeah. Jeez.
And so there are people talking about it. And I think he's getting like mainstream traction and stuff like that. So I think, and I'm also like part of this, this task force that is defining like some of the nature of peer support for addictions and things like that. So like these conversations are happening, but I think the challenge is that the people who are falling victim to this are usually on the internet, and that kind of content is hard to disseminate on the internet.
Yeah.
Because as you pointed out, it's not sexy. And what most people resonate with is like emotional activation.
Yeah.
That's what pushes content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I 100% agree. Yeah. They, yeah.
I think to kind of riff off of that a little bit. So I think one of the biggest challenges that I see in our society is that we don't hone our perception. So this is kind of like has been my shtick for the last 18 months, where if you look at like what we work on, so we'll work on things like emotions, we work on things like logic, but human beings, generally speaking, do not question their perception. Their perception is very like atrophied or underdeveloped.
Can you be a little bit more, when you say perception, do you mean like how we introspect on ourselves, how we understand how other people are thinking, feeling? Yeah, go ahead.
Literally how we perceive. So there's a great yogic concept called glishta.
Okay.
Glishta means coloring. So if you look at the way that you interact with the world is like objective, but then your mind adds some color to what you see or what you perceive. So if I text you and you don't text me back within 10 minutes, the fact of the matter is that you haven't texted me back in 10 minutes. But then what happens is my mind attaches a significance to that.
Yeah.
And what happens on the internet is that we're reacting to all of this stuff like tweets or whatever. And then like we don't look at what our mind, so we judge something when we say this person is bad because I see their tweet. What we don't pay attention to is what is all the ambiguity that my mind fills in, which is actually a lot, especially on places like Twitter.
Yeah.
Because the shorter form the content is, the more your mind has to fill in.
Yeah, it's like when you remember old video games as looking way better than they actually were, and then you go back and you look at it, you're like, wait a second. Yeah.
Absolutely, right? So our mind adds quite a bit to the equation. And I think the whole problem is we don't realize that. And furthermore, the less we realize it, the more what our mind adds to the equation goes out of our control. So literally in the process of psychotherapy, what we do is you have an interaction with someone, like let's say like someone has a history of trauma, and then they go through the world and then their brain interprets these stimuli through the lens of trauma. So literally in psychotherapy for trauma, what we do is go through the process of removing what your mind is adding to the equation, the implication. We do the same thing in social anxiety. Oh, this person didn't do X, Y, Z, and therefore this means this.
Yeah.
So we know that this process has a lot of clinical benefit.
Yeah.
And so in the yogic system, what we try to do is aklishta, which is remove all the colorings of our mind. And then you have a direct perception of the world as it is.
Interesting. Okay. The one thing that's very frustrating is I don't like that therapy has such a heavy connotation about treating an illness.